Female Fluence. We are a place of women empowering women. This is a safe environment where females are not judged nor afraid to flourish. My goal is to help you live an energized life of balance, whether as a mom, a wife, or in your profession. It is time to have self-worth and self-compassion. Live in the present moment and surround yourself with only healthy connections. So join me, Pearl Shua, a woman empowerment life coach, an educator, and a mother of three, to help take you on a journey of true identity and inspiration. Decades of psychological research on hardiness, learned helplessness, coping strategies, and the correlation between cognitive styles and health constantly demonstrates that each individual possesses a unique framework for interpreting life's challenges, a framework that often eludes conscious awareness. When confronted with a crisis, do you tend to focus on immediate improvements rather than on every factor that contributed to this situation, including those beyond your control? We all encounter adversity at various points in our lives, but some of us thrive amidst complexity while others find it difficult to even rise from bed. What distinguishes those from who rebound effectively from adversity? First, they refuse to be overwhelmed by negative emotions or thoughts. Instead, they take the time to process their experiments and then resume their forward momentum. Their mental resilience propels them to seek opportunities instead of lingering in despair. Adversity is a potent teacher, offering us a valuable opportunity to learn from mistakes and gain insights that enhance the likelihood of future success while fostering a sense of peace with the circumstance. Today, we are fortunate to have Alana Stott on my show. Alana's journey has been one of remarkable resilience and transformation. She confronted a traumatic injury during her challenging teenage years, marked by isolation, as well as sexual abuse, neglect, and self-loathing. Despite those hardships, she transitioned into adulthood with unwavering determination and inner strength, paving the way for her life's purpose as a problem solver to improve the world. Today, Alana is an author, a consultant, a speaker, a producer, CEO, and philanthropist. Her primary focus is on supporting vulnerable women, children, and veterans in combating human trafficking. She empowers women to excel in all aspects of their lives, firmly believing that nothing is insurmountable when coupled with the right mindset and a robust support system. Her latest book in 2023, She Who Dares, is a powerful memoir that chronicles her path of self-discovery, revealing unwavering resilience, boundless optimism, advocacy, and the refusal to be defined by labels and constraints. Alana is also the visionary behind multiple brands aimed at empowering women and children to live their fullest lives. In addition to her literary pursuits, Alana Stott dedicates her time to coordinating evacuations of women in Afghanistan, taking down sex traffickers, and as well as participating in war crimes tribunals. Her tireless advocacy has garnered significant recognition, including the prestigious title of the Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, MBE, awarded to her by King Charles on July 5th, 2023, in acknowledgement of her outstanding contributions to supporting vulnerable women and raising awareness about mental health. Alana, I'm so honored to have you on my show today. It's truly a privilege. Thank you for being on Female Fluence. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. What a lovely introduction.
We're excited to get to know you a little bit better. Can you give us a little background about your childhood and what made you the woman you are today? And what are some, the traumas that you've actually endured to make you this strong woman?
Yeah, so I was born in Aberdeen in Scotland. So Aberdeen's one of the smaller cities of Scotland, but it is also the oil and gas capital of Europe. So it's a city that's kind of divided. You've got a great amount of wealth and then you've got a great amount of poverty. So I was from the other side, the poverty side. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 7. So she was a single mum, worked 3 jobs to raise 3 kids. So there was me and my older brother when we got divorced. When I was about 8, I had an accident where I was badly burnt and ended up in hospital for quite a bit of time. And that kind of, I guess, started the process of a different world for me. I guess up to the age of 7, I remember, never any financial abundance, but there was never a shortage of love in the house. I guess after the divorce, things changed. And then after the burns, and it was actually while I was in the hospital with the burns, my mum found out she was pregnant with my younger brother. This was to a different father. When he was then born, his father was very young and didn't really understand parenthood, I guess. So Adam was really my responsibility to a great deal. And then as mum started at this point, I guess mum started getting a lot sicker and Adam became a lot more involved with me. Unfortunately, then mum passed away when I was 15. I'd started working around about 11 as well to supplement the income that we needed in the household. So by the time she got sick around about 13, the income that I was earning needed to more support the household, pay rent, pay bills, food, etc. And then when she passed away, it then became a full-time job to look after a household. So I'd been working, I mean, since 11. So at this point, I was now earning not too bad because I'd started working in sales. But when mum was probably the worst part, the kind of hospice part of sickness, I was about 14 and I was now working in a sales environment. And everybody that I worked with was a lot older than me. And I guess, looking back now, I can see I was very, very, I'm so sorry, very, very vulnerable at this point. And the older men that were in this working environment recognized that I was a vulnerable 14-year-old. So I guess this was around about the time that my innocence was lost. I would say I always put it in that way. Over the next few years, I transitioned through my own little life, and then my little brother's dad regained custody of him and moved him back down to England where he was living. But by this point, I'd lived with him my whole life. He was 6 years old, so I didn't know anything else but to be with Adam. So I then moved down to England and got a job in a hotel, cleaning rooms and things just to be closer to him. But once again, I'm in this vulnerable situation as a young girl. And, you were vulnerable to the elements of exploitation, and it happened again here. So when I was 17, I was raped by 2 men. This time I did go to the police and we went through the whole court system of a rape trial. There was a lot more women came forward as well when I was doing the case, but one by one they would drop out. There was a lot of intimidation, threats, all sorts of things going on. So I ended up going to trial on my own, and they both did go to prison. But I think one thing that it taught me was that there's a trauma associated with sexual assault, but there's also a trauma associated with the justice system and how to actually get through that stage. So I really found it within myself around this point. I think I was around 18 by the time they actually went to prison, and I wanted to help other women that would have to go through that process, because it wasn't a nice process for sure, especially being in the court, etc. So that point was really when I said I was going to dedicate my life to helping other women who were going through similar things. And I was still learning a lot at this point. I was still 18. I was having to go through, navigate through that system. And it wasn't really, I guess, until I met my husband when I was 25 that I almost found another supporter. He was ex-special forces and he believed in what I was doing, and he wanted to help do that with me. And along the way, I'd learned a lot more about grooming, sex trafficking, all the different things that women and children have to face. And he really felt like he wanted to get involved and help. So that was around about the time that we both decided that I would also train as a close protection officer, so I could help in the future to anybody who needed that. So that brought me to, I guess we can go over all the other things, but that's what really brought me into the world of advocacy, I guess, knowing that I'd been through it and I'd come out the other end.
Everything you just told me was like all the way through 18. That's just remarkable. I mean, it's so intense. I have 2 daughters of my own, and I mean, we all really know that teenage years are really difficult, but to add so many layers to it, I mean, you went through a lot, but you came out of it 10 times stronger than anyone. So that's
Yeah,
just remarkable. So I commend you for that.
I think that there's so many different ways, and I always describe it as the crossroads in your life that you always come up against, that there's ways that you can go and routes that you can take. And I've just always found, firstly, forgiveness is a big thing that I live by, that, and
Yeah.
it's not just about the person, it's about for yourself, being able to forgive and then being able to use the experience to help other people is really beneficial to healing, I think.
I completely agree with you. Now, before life set so many limiting beliefs on you, what did you imagine for yourself as a little girl? Like, what did you dream that you were going to become?
Um, the first thing I ever wanted to be when I was a little girl was a veterinarian. So that was something that, and then I had this dream that there was a spider came into my office, and then I was like, I don't want to be a vet anymore. And then it was lawyer. That was definitely something that I always wanted to be when I was a little girl. I wanted to work in some sort of law capacity, helping people. So there was always that aim, but during my schooling years, I was always very good at maths. Maths was always my number one thing. So everybody would push me towards accountancy. That was really when I started taking accountancy in, I believe I was about 12 or 13 when I started that section of schooling, and everybody said, look, this is the job you need to do, but it was very boring. And
Lots
but
of numbers. Yeah.
yeah, and then obviously when mum died, where the school that I went to, although I had a scholarship to the school, it still cost money. There were still expenses you had to pay that I couldn't afford, and then obviously then university
So
became
at
that.
that point, were you living just with your brother, or were you living with a relative when all
No,
of this was happening?
there was myself and my older brother. He's a year older than me, and then our younger brother, who was 6 at the time. And mum went into hospice probably when I was about 14, and from that point, there was nobody in the house. It was us. I'm not quite sure how that worked with the social system, but
Right.
it did. I do remember we used to get a lot of visits from social workers and various different people, but yeah, there was very little interest paid.
Just so deep. But that's a remarkable story. Thank you so much for sharing that because I know that's difficult. Now, I've often heard the phrase "our pain births our purpose." And I feel like, especially for you, with everything that you went through, you kind of decided that this was going to be your purpose. So, what advice do you have for our listeners today as far as forgiving our past and being able to really appreciate and live in the present and really appreciate the present and so that you can move forward?
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have been through a lot of trauma, and I could, well, the one thing I would say about everybody, and everybody processes things in very different ways. Like everybody deals with a situation, especially a sexual assault situation, in very different
Of
ways. And there's
course.
no right or wrong way to do it. But one thing that I would say is the people that struggle with forgiveness and letting it go struggle the most. The people that are able to take that situation, forgive the situation, and I don't mean forgive the person, the bad guy or whoever done anything to you. You don't necessarily have to say I'm forgiving you, but you have to forgive. So many people blame themselves for a situation, and it's important to forgive yourself and forgive the situation and let it go, and then be able to move on. And whenever I'm speaking to victims, I really find that finding purpose is going to help you. When you're trying to process the trauma, when you're trying to go through the healing process, actually helping other people is such an important healing aspect. And I think that the sooner that you can get to that stage of that cycle, the grief cycle, and find that, and it can be the fire in your belly that's like, I'm not going to let anybody else go through what I've just been through.
Right.
It can be, let's see if we can make changes in this. Let's, whatever it might be, find that purpose, and it gives you that extra strength. I think mental health can deteriorate really badly without purpose.
Yes, that's very valid. I totally agree with you. Now, you wanted to create a brand that represented the idea of being feminine and tough, which I truly love. And you called it She Who Dares. And then later on, you wrote a book. But tell us about this idea and your brand.
Yeah, She Who Dares. So my husband is UK Special Forces. So the SAS's motto is He Who Dares Wins. And that's I guess it transcends through all the different special forces. So a lot of the work that I've ever done, so, I was a debt collector when I was younger. I've worked in property development. I've worked in close protection, bodyguard in the area. I run a private security company now. It's very male dominated, but the the reason I became the number one debt collector in Scotland was never because I had any aggression or force or ability to make people pay. It was because I would use empathy and I would help people and I would make a plan to get them out of the situation they were in. So I believe that our feminine nurture and energy is so powerful, and it doesn't have to be, if you work in the male dominated industries, you don't have to turn into a male. You don't have to be, start dressing differently and start acting differently, and you can still be very, very feminine and still have that strong,
you use that to your advantage, that strength, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to show that was okay. I do see so many people enter the worlds that I'm in, and then they want to change themselves because they want to be tougher, or they want to start, using language like men use, or whatever it might be. You don't need to. I mean, you be who you want to be, but don't conform to other people's standards.
Right. So keep being yourself, and just, it doesn't matter, because as far as being feminine, I mean, the strength that we can actually have and to share that with others. I mean, so you created into a brand and you're acknowledging it. So,
and I think that women are, men and women have different strengths for sure, but the strength that I see within the female community is completely different. But if we look at even just motherhood and childbirth, we all go through that process of having a baby, and whether we do it by C-section or by natural birth. If we take natural birth, for an instance, everybody has that moment when they're like, I can't do this, I'm not in it. You have to, you've got no choice, and you find that extra bit of power that pushes you through. And I think if we can look for that in every other aspect of our life, we can, we do ourselves a disservice to say we're not strong as women.
That's very true. We have to think about that exact moment, and then we can do anything, I think. Okay, so in your book, She Who Dares, I'm going to share a powerful section for our listeners. It was 2014 when the phone rang at Alana Stott's home. On the other end was her husband, Dean, a member of the UK Special Forces serving in Libya in the midst of a civil war. As the sound of a gunfire echoed through the receiver, Alana felt her heart racing as she struggled to gather as much information as possible from him. Moments later, the line went dead. Can you tell us about this moment, and then what made you write this book? I mean, I can not even imagine being on the phone, knowing that this is where my husband is at, and I'm trying to get as much information. How are you? Are you okay? And all of a sudden, the phone goes dead.
Yeah, so I was at home in Scotland, and Molly, my daughter, I think she was about 3 at that point, 2 or 3. And so you're being mom at home. But when Dean was on missions, because when he was in the special forces, he had a huge team around him and he was able to do these things. Now he was in the private security industry and he was on his own for a lot of the time. A lot of the people that he worked with were more of the back end, the office, the suits, back in London. He would always be the person on the ground doing the work. So I always knew he didn't have the greatest of support in the actual corporate world. So I always was the one who was working alongside him. So I would be doing all the correspondence, the planning, the logistics, all these different things that were going on with a security operation. But in Libya, so 2011, Arab Spring happened in, North Africa. And there was, a major revolution, and Libya was part of that. So it had gone through this civil war, and they now didn't have a government, and it was a bit disarray. So in 2014 was when the airport got blown up, and Tripoli was basically overturned completely. So he was over there at this point. Now I knew that there was also forces over there, government forces, but they weren't allowed to engage, and we knew that they weren't allowed to engage. So anything that was happening on the ground, I knew Dean would end up getting involved. So there was normally some sort of gunfire or something going on in the background, but this time was definitely different. I could hear it was literally whizzing past his head. I was trying to gather where he was. But what was also happening at the other side was I was getting calls from the special forces in the UK saying, have you heard from Dean? What's happening? So I knew that this was serious because they're coming to me to ask for information. So I knew that there was things going on that shouldn't be. I also knew that Dean would never leave MD behind. So if there was trouble, he was going to go in. But at the same time, I had my little girl there who was asking for like snacks and, Peppa Pig to be on the TV and whatever it might be. So you're trying to juggle all these different emotions. And that's really it's always been that way in our household. So you really just have to learn to desensitize from what's going on. Wherever we're working, whatever we're doing, we have to just be able to switch between mom, business, security, and it's pretty much the standard of how our life is.
That's a lot of different hats, but you have some of your hats are very intense to switch from. So you kind of have to really be able to manage that, especially if you have a child, which is that's difficult to do.
Yeah. And I do think that, I always say that, whatever your faith is, whatever you believe in, you're never given more than you can handle. And I do believe that my years of childhood that I went through kind of prepared me for what I was going to be doing in the future. So I do take it as, now I won't say a positive necessarily, but it definitely has helped.
I'm sure. So what was the reason? Why did you decide to write this memoir? Was it just to was it more therapeutical for yourself, just to release everything you've been through, and then also help other women and empower them because you have, turned things around. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I love writing for a start. So when I was a little girl, I used to write all the time. My mum loved writing, my granda loved writing. We always wrote little short stories and poems. When mum died, I stopped. And I never really put two and two together for a lot of years that I just stopped writing. And then it wasn't until 2020 that I really picked up the pen again. I had a great auntie Molly who was 95 in 2020 and she passed away. And a lot of spiritual things happened around that time, but something made me want to start writing again. At this point, Dean had already wrote his book, Relentless. And a lot of people, when they read that book, said, oh, when's Alana writing a book? Now, I then had always had this kind of journal that I was keeping, and I thought I could write a book around this, like it could be done. So I put pen to paper, and as I was doing it, I thought, will I ever release it? I don't know, because there's a lot of really personal, private things in it. I think even at this point, I hadn't really spoke outwardly about the sexual assault. It wasn't something that I was, I would talk to people individually, but I'd never gone out and spoke about it. And then I decided I spoke to a few friends about it, and they spoke to me about circumstances they'd been in and that how talking to me and things that I'd been through helped them. And I thought, well, if one person, maybe the book could help more people if I put it out there. So I made that decision. Well, yeah, let's go out. I've got no, I am really an open book anyway. So I thought, well, why not just put it out? So I wrote that and then really enjoyed it, and I've been writing ever since. So there we go.
No, that's great. And I think a lot of people can resonate with what you've been through. So it helps. And as long as it's helping, then that is so, like it gives you strength in return, because it's, just being able to give back to one person. That's all it takes.
I think from I'd seen movies, I'd seen things where they described how you should be after an incident, and it used to frustrate me because I thought that there isn't one way. I've met so many survivors who have literally gone from the top to the bottom. There's so many spectrums, and your way of dealing with it is your way of dealing with it, and nobody can tell you that's wrong.
Everybody deals with things in a different way. That's very true. Yeah, sure. We can't put that in a box. Now, your husband is no longer with UK Special Forces. So if you can tell us the story of his relationship with Prince Harry, how there was a royal request for you to raise $1.3 million for mental health, and your husband set a world record.
Yeah, so Dean and Harry trained together, I believe, back in 2007 when they were doing their, I'll say it wrong, so I'm not going to say it, something to do with air traffic. they became fast friends really quickly. Dean, if you ever meet Dean, Dean's the kind of person that will get on with absolutely anybody. He doesn't care who you are. He'll just, you'll fall in love with him. So Dean and Harry became really close, and they've been friends ever since. In 2016, he was setting up an organization called Heads Together, which was a collaboration of mental health charities. And at the same time, Dean had a really bad parachuting accident, and that's why he left the forces. And his leg got really badly injured during it. So cycling, we discovered that cycling was helping the pressure on his knee, the pressure on his legs. So he was using a bike just to travel back and forth from the office and various things. So when Libya was happening, he was getting himself into so much dangerous situations like we just spoke about. And I wanted him to find an outlet where he could use this adrenaline that he's always had, but be safe as well. So
a lot less dangerous outlet.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought, well, let's do like a world record attempt. So it still gives you that goal, that mission, plus your cycling. And we picked the longest road in the world, which was Argentina to Alaska, 14,000 miles. Harry was setting this up at the same time. We were going to do it for human trafficking, but Harry said, look, could you do it for this cause? And we said, well, absolutely. It's a great cause. So let's do it. So that's when we started on that mission, and it took a long time. We raised over $1 million, and Dean broke 2 world records along the way. So that took us to there. Yeah.
That is an incredible story. Wow. Okay. So now the next incredible thing. Recently, you received the title of Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, the MBE from King Charles, for your work supporting vulnerable women and mental health awareness. This is such a great honor. I mean, you have to explain to our listeners what this award means. What did you feel when you received it, and how the whole experience was?
Yeah, well, I actually got an email from the Home Office in the UK in, I believe, late November, early December 2022. And, I didn't believe it. I thought it was a spam or, so it was almost just like deleted. And it basically just said that I'd been awarded this award, and that I think it said if you want to reject it, because you can reject it as well, then you've got to go back to them. And then they release it so the London Gazette is the oldest newspaper in the UK. They release the information at the Gazette, and then that's where it's published to let people know. So the Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire is it's given to celebrities, it's given to famous people, but it's given to just normal people who have made a difference in their communities, in the country, etc. So this was given to me for my work with vulnerable women and mental health. So the mental health was obviously for this campaign, and then I believed that it was because of the human trafficking. And then when I spoke to King Charles at the actual investiture, it was for the work within human trafficking. So you're not told who nominates you. You're not told how it works. It basically goes to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister sends it on to the King, and then he does the presentation. So yeah, it is a great honor. And nothing that we do is for awards or titles or any of these things, but to be able to get that and what we can do with it to then open the doors to help more people, because our work with survivors and preventing human trafficking it's never going to be over. I think we're going to be fighting this fight for the next generation.
Of course. And yes, this does open many doors, additional doors for you. And what a inspiring thing for your kids to see. Did you take your kids to this event? I mean, how was their reaction?
Yeah, it was really important. Firstly, it was really important I took my daughter. So I've got a 12-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 1-year-old now. And I wanted my 12-year-old to be there to see it, because she's been through, they've all been through life with us, but she's been through everything. The last 12 years of her life, as she's been working with in everything that we do. It doesn't matter if we're evacuating people from Afghanistan, if you're working with it, she's there and she sees it, and she often has to come with us on all these crazy trips. So the award was really for her too, to see that this is why we're doing it, and this is why mummy's kind of always busy and always working. And I want her to see that and have that same mentality and strength. The whole dream is that she never has to go through any of the things that I've been through, but she's still capable of having that resilience to help people as well. So We were allowed 3 guests, so you're allowed yourself plus 3 guests. So my dad was very, very adamant that he wanted to come along, so that was cool. But my son, who was 7, said that he didn't want to wait outside with the knights. That's what he said. I don't want to wait outside with the knights. So then my husband was like, well, but we still do quite a bit of work with the UK and in the household. So we managed to pull a little favor and get an extra seat. So Dean was able to come too. So I had my daughter, my son, and my dad and my brother. So it was very special. My son was very bored because you're in the castle for 2 hours, and there's certain parts of the castle that you're not allowed to touch or go near. There's barriers stopping people, and my son just wanted to sit on all the thrones and all the seats that you're not allowed to sit on. So a lot of the time I was spent trying to stop him from sitting down on Queen Elizabeth's throne or whatever it might be.
Wow, what an unbelievable experience. That's incredible. So you are such a busy woman. I mean, I can't get over everything you've done and you're continuing to do. Now, please tell us more about your work in security, as well as like helping people, freeing people from countries of conflict, and advocating for human trafficking solutions. And that's a lot of different things that you're doing.
Yeah, we started our security company in 2011. After Dean was injured out of the military, we started up the security company, and it really was just, we weren't sure what way it was going to go. At the time, there was a lot of maritime security, so that was protecting ships from piracy and things. Now, I trained as a close protection officer, so I'd done all my courses. Then I'd done my anti-piracy courses, my ship security courses. So I'd done all those things, but then I fell pregnant with Molly, and there isn't a high demand for pregnant bodyguards for sure.
I don't know. I think you could do this as well.
Yeah. So, but I realized that Dean is incredibly capable of what he does, and there's a lot of work goes into the back end. Part of why I wrote my book How to Ask for Money is because I see so many businesses failing because they've not got the back end sorted. You can be as great as you want out the front end. I've seen some of the most amazing operators in the security world, but they can't do their invoices, or they can't send a bill, or they can't get all these things right. And that's why most of these companies end up failing. So I decided quite early on, well, I know the industry, I've trained in the industry, but let me do the back stuff. Let me do the planning, logistics, all these things. And Dean can be out the front, and I'll be there when I need to be. But this kind of is where my skill set is going to lie. So I've been doing that for a lot of years, and we've worked in Libya, Somalia, Yemen. We've worked all over the world, but usually it used to be where there was a conflict, we would be. When we moved to America, we wanted to take the company here, but we looked into the intelligence-led security. So in America, everyone's got guns. Most of the security companies operate with guns. In the UK, we don't have weapons. Like, we're not allowed weapons. So nothing that we do is based around, our training is not based around holding a weapon. Our training is about how to make sure we're never in this situation. Like, our weapon is always our last plan. So we wanted to bring that same approach here, which meant you're thinking first. You're basically making sure that nothing bad's going to happen, rather than what are you going to do when the bad thing does happen. So that's our approach to security, and it worked really well. We do more things like vulnerability assessments. We look at people's lifestyles. We look at their online presences. Anything that might be a threat to family and children, we check that out. So that's our main business. But then when anything happens, for example, when the withdrawal in Afghanistan happened, our phone was nonstop with people asking for help to get people out, to get friends, family that were stuck there. So we got the first woman we got out, an amazing woman who had set up women and girls schools back in the 90s when the Taliban banned education. So she was now high threat. We had to get her out. We ended up getting 20 of her colleagues out. And then it just trickled from there. So we're now at about 1,200 people we've got out, and it's still a lot of people think that it's all over, but there's still people in safe houses that need getting out of there.
Your life sounds like a movie. I'm listening to you, and It's very rewarding, but at the same time very intense. So I feel like you have like that excitement, that adrenaline, like going on like 24 hours a day, right?
It
Um,
is, and we've just got to, like, the one thing that we're really careful about is learning to we know we'll sit here and we'll do our work and we'll do what needs to be done, and then any spare time we have is with the kids and
with
doing
the
fun.
kids, and you try to make it as normal as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, the next question is actually related to your other book, How to Ask for Money. For those of us either in fundraising or entrepreneurs, what advice can you give from this book? So how we can create that connection so that our investors feel that it's beneficial for them to invest in our organization, since there's a lot of fear, when asking for money, right?
Yeah, most it is. I didn't realize it was in people's top 10 fears. Um, Asking for money is terrifying for people. What I wanted to do with the book was to give people a bit of a plan, and it's actually non-profit or profit. It's the same plan. The only difference is a lot of the times when it comes to non-profit, people think that they have to approach with the cause, like this is the important cause and we really want you to help. But donors don't want that. Donors want to see what the kind of business plan is, the same way as they would if they're investing in a business. They want to see what are the benefits, how's it going to benefit them, what are the returns. You're looking at the same thing. So my formula in there is called MAP. So it's about preparing things with the right mindset, being accountable, the planning, the strategy, and it gives you that whole formula how to do it. And then I do talk about exactly that, about how to treat donors after the fact. A lot of the time we can do like the one and done thing with a donor, where the donor donates a great amount of money and then we do a gala, whatever it might be, and then we don't speak to them again for a year, and then we go and ask them for more money. That's not the best way to deal with a donor. Keeping a donor engaged and making them feel appreciated and keeping
Right.
them informed, all these
Keeping the
things.
connection constant, I believe.
For sure, yeah. And I think it is a relationship thing, and it isn't, so hopefully the book does explain from start to finish how to have that connection. And then I also have a section in it where I talk about understanding your value, and as I was saying earlier, about being able to recognize how much you're worth and how much your time means something, and that you should be charging for it. And that, a lot of us, especially women, we've got this imposter syndrome where we think that, is it worth that? Should we be charging that amount? And it's just hopefully the book helps with that too.
You decrease your worth. Very true.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, women, I think women have got, they like to be 100% before they're offering it out. I think men are like 60% before they're
That's very true. That's very true. Besides writing 5 books this year, working on security, saving the world, fighting in war, evacuating people from, countries of conflict. Now you also have a podcast. Now that your podcast is called Behind the Scene. And I love how you guys had said behind every successful man or woman, there's a team that you don't see. So this podcast, you interview the behind the scenes people. So is this more, now you do this with your husband, right? You guys co-host it together?
Yeah, we interview both. So we'll interview the person that the world sees and then the person behind the scene. And what we're trying to get is to, how each person's life works, how they intertwine, and the moments that maybe wasn't so great for them and how they worked through that. Because I think regardless if you're the celebrity in this situation or if you're just, normal mum, pa back home, these things are tough. There is always someone who sacrifices so that someone else can do, maybe the wife's maybe had a career and then she has kids and she has to give up that career,
Right.
whatever the circumstances might be. What we wanted to do was hear from both parties and how both parties have made it work, especially for people that have been through some tough times and then come out the other end, in order to help those people that are maybe still going through it. And each episode, we see such similarities between each couple, things like communication, respect, appreciation, all these things are coming out as to what makes it successful. And we want to be able to help people that are maybe going through similar circumstances.
I love it. I have to check it out. That's great. Okay, well, to wrap it up, today has been truly a special day, as I've had the privilege of hosting you on my show. Throughout Alana's compelling narrative, she has guided us on a profound journey through the peaks and valleys of her life, offering invaluable insights. Alana's life philosophy underscores the principle that what we radiate into the world returns to us, a belief that fuels her soul. She does not shy away from her fears. Instead, she confronts them head on with a relentless commitment to improve the world. She passionately advocates for the transformative power of the right mindset and the unwavering support. Her overarching mission serves as a beacon demonstrating that women possess boundless capabilities and that the realm of possibility expands when we harness our strengths. Furthermore, Alana's enduring commitment to giving back is evident in her venture into the creation of empowering children's book series. That's the other thing you're doing. She recognizes that by equipping our children with the tools of confidence and resilience, we are nurturing their potential to become better and stronger adults. Thank you, Alana, so much for sharing your incredible story with us today. Is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
Oh, no, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been really great. I love speaking with you.
Thank you, as well as myself. We will share all the links in our show notes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today to Female Fluence. Together, we can influence and motivate other mind-like females. Your job is to feel alive, be in control, and always be true to your own self. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can continue feeling inspired. All the links and notes from this episode will be posted on my website, femalefluence.com. Don't forget to also follow me at Female Fluence on both Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, if you are in need of a woman empowerment life coach to help you identify the barriers that keep you from living the life you seek, please send an email to info@femalefluence.org. Remember, my friends, don't just exist, but live your life to the fullest. I'm your host, Pearl Mashur. Until we talk next time.